The fundamental aspect of marketing and football is that it is a uniting force. It unites everybody and it unites consumers, and that's the reason why brands get involved. And that's why we as agencies and marketeers work with football in order to present a platform to brands to be able to do their business. Europe is really the highlight of this, and I'm going to start the presentation on the global perspective, the European perspective, before I go on to more local discussion. Football is easily the #1 sport in Europe, and particularly the main 5 markets where the major multinational brands look to generate their business. TV consumption is the #1, and as you can see here in France, it's 3 times as many as the second sport. So it really does captivate a large audience. And I know in India, cricket is the paradox, but it is all rooted in the club formation, which is something that the IPL has been able to do. But club football is much older. And what's interesting is that in European markets, club football transcends regional football, such as the Champions League. So in all the key markets, it's club football. So the need for a domestic league and a domestic platform for competition is really what countries like India should be looking towards in order to be able to generate their business. And if the I-League has its challenges because it covers such a wide geography, the next stage is to have state leagues. The competition to football and to dollars linked to football come from all aspects. And I want to talk about how clubs are very aggressive about addressing, gathering those marketing dollars. Because this is where the next level of competition will come for I-League clubs. If they're presenting a commercial platform in India, they will need to be competing with the multinational leagues, such as the English Premier League, who have offices around the region and are attacking, searching for the same marketing dollars. So the game needs to be raised above and beyond those. The Spanish model, which is agency representation, means that there are many people out there in the marketplace representing Spanish clubs, hoping to tap into those marketing dollars. And then the German model is obviously through partnerships, and we heard yesterday about how the German league is working with the South African football body to be able to reach out there and approach that. And then there's the French and Italians who bring a different flavor. We're very close to approaching a situation where more money will leave India towards European clubs than stay in India for I-League clubs. What constitutes a good partner in marketing? And some lessons here for clubs and associations and leagues. Financial compliance is the first thing that we look for as an agency hoping to work with clubs. The reason for that is that a partnership is an investment. And you need to know who you're investing in. And you need that investment to generate some growth. And if you're not compliant, if you're not transparent, it's difficult to ascertain what is growth. And you always need return on investments. And if there is some compliance, then the return on investments will be pretty transparent. The second aspect is facilities. Any decent club anywhere in the world has a decent facility. It is how it reaches out to its community, it's how it interacts with its fans, and it's how it ensures that there is technical excellence on the pitch. We heard in the previous panel that there was discussions that some of the facilities in India that may not have female toilets. Those are basic requirements for any infrastructure that's being developed right now. Communication with a fan base, and fans sometimes are people who come to your matches, and fans sometimes are a little bit more spread out. And reaching out to a broadest possible fan base is a challenge. And in a country as wide and varied as India, it becomes even more so. So making sure that there are communications platforms, whether it's through traditional media or social media, which is the new, more cost-effective but more tactical channel for communicating with fan base, becomes very important and a way of reaching out. But again, as I mentioned earlier, India is the second largest Facebook community for Chelsea Football Club in the world. If local clubs can't compete with that, then the local clubs need to compete with that level of engagement in order to tap into the dollars that will help them build the sporting platform that they're aspiring to. Finally, but obviously not least, it's the game of football. making sure that there is a youth team, a national team, an international representation within each community, within each club. Players need to aspire to reach a national level of competition through a club platform. If clubs don't have structured bodies, they won't be able to provide that route for their best players. Management back office, professional management back office. That's an area which is obviously in the last 10 years grown in cricket because of the explosion of the sport, but needs to now be addressed in football. There isn't enough people in football, and that's why this event is so well attended, is because we're all aspiring to work in the sport of football. And that's the next challenge. And finally, academies and schools. We've talked about whether the schools should have football on their curriculum. We've talked about whether the clubs should have more development. I think we should just be out there doing it. Clubs should be tying up with schools, schools should be tying up with clubs, in order to give children a platform outside of their education. I was asked to give some examples of how clubs market themselves from a European point of view, and I gave you, I have some examples here. The first one is Manchester City. This is just a slide to show how they are strategic in their view on approaching the marketplace. And this is not in their management slide, this is in their marketing slide. This is how they sell their sponsorships. On the top right, you have the idea of sustainability, but not in the environment, but in players. In being able to create an ecosystem amongst their playing community to make sure that they have enough players coming through. Then we have the idea of facilities. I mentioned how important that is. Manchester City is spending over £150 million in building a campus, and it aspires to be the best in Europe, but definitely in the UK. Commitment to the community through CSR or other activities. There was, in the old times, football clubs, particularly in Europe, only worried about people within a 5-kilometre radius. That's obviously changed. But as we aspire to grow, if you cannot look after the people within your immediate community, you cannot look after the people in a wider community. Commitment to people and training and building up systems. We've talked about how sometimes you need to bring outside help to do that, and we need to tap into the resources broadly. Finally, about the global fan base, which I mentioned, and then financial compliance. The next slide is from Paris Saint-Germain. Recently, David Beckham signed to go there, and this is a slide from the week before he joined. And it gives you an idea of how broad and wide their communication channels are with their communities. The numbers are pretty impressive, but not so high that it's unsurmountable for Indian football clubs. But the key thing there at the bottom is that 51% of the internet traffic around French Football League One is Paris Saint-Germain traffic. So they don't only aspire to compete against other clubs, but they aspire to beat the league at its own social communication messaging. The third one is about Inter Milan, and to demonstrate how they manage their outreach programs. They don't have one campus in Milan. They have outreach programs through coaching and clinics. For a very nominal fee, they will send their coaches around the world to create 2-week coaching clinics. And their reach is growing every week. As recently as a month ago, they were in Southeast Asia, growing markets that haven't existed yet. Already they're in Cambodia, and I don't know of any other European club that has an academy or a coaching base in Cambodia. And finally, this one is from Juventus, to give you an idea of what they worry about when they generate marketing platforms. It's pretty broad, but it's the traditional assets of PR and awareness and exclusivity. But the words like unique, prestigious, transversal, multicultural, these things are what clubs are offering. And Indian football has all these in large volumes, but it just hasn't figured out how to package it in a way for brands to be able to reach out. The next area I want to talk about very briefly is because we talked about Moneyball being the title of this, is the idea of players as assets. Here is an example of some work we did with Hyundai, where we signed up 5 players from 5 countries. You'll recognize on the right Podolski and Benzema from Real Madrid. On the left, we've got Sturridge from Chelsea, now at Liverpool, Rossi, and Casillas, captain of Spain. Sorry, in the middle there. Players are now, India has a well-founded, solid culture of celebrity. Players can feed in that culture, and you need to work with individuals who grow in skill and stature to be able to tap into that. And this is a way of reaching out. And it's a huge amount of investment by brands such as Hyundai to be able to do that. The next one is Heineken and Champions League. Again, this time they used older players who had previously an association with Champions League. They called them the Champions League Club. And finally, the ultimate mega star at the moment, and this is EA Sports, the gaming firm, who has gone from using a wide variety of players, including Rooney, and over just using one, and their work is now limited to just working with Lionel Messi. But it's the idea of celebrity that reaches out to all corners of the world, irregardless of how much of a football fan you are. Another aspect that I thought I should tap into is the development of a league. And we've recently signed up to work with the Russian league in helping them with their marketing activities. And I thought I'd share with you a few slides on how they went about recreating their league. It's a market that is, one of the 4 countries that are aspiring to lead the world in the next 10, 15 years, along with India. And they have a huge amount of wealth, but they don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to have professional football that competes with the leagues coming in from Europe. So there's a lot of similarities. The first drivers for their growth was international events that were being hosted. And there's a lesson here. I think Commonwealth Games came to India in 2010, and it wasn't necessarily the catalyst that it should have been across more sports, but it needs to review how other major global events can be that catalyst. We talked yesterday briefly about the FIFA Under-17 World Cup. Maybe that's the platform, maybe that's the catalyst. That you need the effort of the league itself, but also the clubs themselves need to be involved. And I'm not sure how cohesive that situation is in India. Instead of being competitive, they need to work towards the same direction for the leagues. The league themselves, they identified what the model that they wanted to follow, and essentially in football there is only one model at the moment that is being copied, and it's the Western European model. The South American model is quite unique because of the way the players are transferred. But the Western model is obviously all towards fan orientation. Increase of participation is an important part. We've talked about grassroots participation in a number of sessions. We need to create new messages so that people can recognize the effort that's being made. So with success comes success in not only on the pitch, but in other platforms, but also in other markets. And European football has been an area where the Russian teams have started to achieve some success. A huge amount of emotion and a huge amount of marketing opportunities for brands. They've tried to attack 3 main areas in order to make sure that the new league succeeds. The quality of the football, they've done that through bringing in some major players, some senior, but some current, and some very talented coaches. The coverage of the event, in television terms, they've decided to go for high definition, but also to ensure that there is a communication platform across all channels. And then the promotion, an area which I think all sports can learn, is the idea of promotion within the stadium and outside in terms of websites and the digital domain. And finally, having a coherent message. And that, a little bit here about the television coverage, but what I want to talk about is the coherent message about the brand. They identified stuff, that some aspects of other leagues that we may take for granted. But the idea of having a single font, a consistent brand for the league, and as much of the branding within the broadcast elements as possible. And I wanted to just show those 4 pictures at the bottom. If you see the 3 jerseys, they have the same font for the names and the same font for the numbers. Very simple, very subtle, but it's a way of making sure that the league has a stamp of consistency across all its assets. You can see in all its communication, everywhere, wherever you watch Premier League in the world, you'll see them using the same assets. And that asset has evolved over the last 15 years of the league has been around. So it's not been a tired image, it's just moved with the times. But it's an important part of creating a new league that ensures that you have a consistent message, because brands have that within themselves. Brands look for aspirational and quality platforms to work with.